Most people think success in finance comes down to strategy, products, or timing, but at the highest level, it's really about the quality of the person making the decisions.
Money is extremely emotional. It's a lot of reactive work, habits that have compounded over time in a negative way and put them in a hole.
Taking things off the plate that allows us to really start to flourish and do good again.
Everything speeds up and you don't know what to do.
Impacts so much of your mental, physical, and your ability to be durable.
Things will slip pretty quickly.
As long as you're still breathing, there's always a window of opportunity to be seized. Regret is one of the worst feelings in the world, right?
The highest performers I know live very intentional lifestyle. Everything protects their energy. They're very calculated.
When your window of opportunity opens, will you be ready? All right, y'all. Welcome to another episode of the Catch Window Podcast. Excited to have a talk with Jacob here. Most people think success in finance comes down to strategy, products, or timing, but at the highest level, it's really about the quality of the person making the decisions. On this show, we call that the catch window. It's the moment where preparation meets opportunity. Jacob, we're excited to have you, man. You mind telling the listeners a little bit more about you, who you are, and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to joining you on here. My name is Jacob Grauberger. I'm a financial advisor located in Overland Park, Kansas City metro area. I've been an advisor for 2 years, former college athlete. My clients, it's a lot about, taking high performers, a lot of business owners, and just all the messy things in life and really just providing a little bit more clarity. I'm taking something off their plate, and whether that's with full-fledged financial planning, the risk management side, investments, definitely meet the clients where they're at, but I like to be along for the journey on all the different areas I can serve them. So really excited to be on here though.
Heck yeah, dude. We're excited to have you. And I know we're excited to learn a little bit more about you and take as much information and wisdom from it as we can. I know you work with a lot of entrepreneurs and high performers. I mean, these people obviously big decisions, a lot of pressure, dealing with income and payroll, all kinds of stuff. But when you're helping someone, make financial decisions, how much of that is like actual numbers versus, how they think and operate?
I think it's a huge blend between the two. The numbers will tell a story as far as what's going to make sense from an efficiency standpoint, whether it's taxes or investment growth and performance. But when it comes to making financial decisions and planning around it, as I'm sure you know, money is very emotional. So it's really getting a feel for their suitability, their values, what's really important to them, because that can be the difference between, going in one way or another, as far as aggressiveness or, a number of different things. But yeah, it's definitely both. The emotional standpoint, money is extremely emotional, so you have to just make sure that just because the numbers say one thing, that it's not going to put them. At the end of the day, my job is to make somebody feel more comfortable about their situation. Not muddy the waters. Definitely a blend of the two, I would say.
And it's big, especially that last part that you said there about, making someone feel comfortable in the decisions they're making. I know there's probably a lot that goes behind that. And the big word that comes to my mind is stability. Obviously, there's a multitude of reasons, like, as you said, why spending is emotional and how that can impact people day to day, week to week, quarter to quarter. What do some of those decisions look like when it comes to dealing with these people and helping them be comfortable with where they're at and what they're doing with their money and where they're putting it?
Yeah, I think it's a conversation that, money is avoided a lot of times. You can get caught up in the hustle of your practice or your business, your job, your family, your kids, everything that goes on. And money is not always an exciting thing to really dive into. So a lot of times when I'm meeting with individuals, it may be the first time that they've sat down with, he and she or husband and wife, partner and partner, that they've actually allocated some time just to discuss, where they're at with their financial journey. And it's,
You said something I thought was super profound about, there's a lot of emotion around the money making decisions and you're
right,
kind of there to bring that peaceful stability. What does that look like going, your process of doing that?
right. Yeah. So, it starts with just a high level conversation, getting to know them as individuals, everything about them, their hobbies, their job, their family dynamic. When you get to know all those things, I think it's the first time a lot of these individuals are able to, give all the information and then let somebody else present to them that high level picture, take a step back and show them all, like, what it looks like. And I think things get a little bit simpler when you can put it all in front of them and give rationales as to why we're, maybe making a recommendation or this. And then from there, you leave it up to the client, and it's at the end of the day, it's always their decision. My job is just to it's not to tell them what to do, it's just see what they want to do and then, tell them the best way to do it, really.
100%. I think that's amazing. Being the guide, not the hero. I hear that a lot
Absolutely.
in the sales world, and even in what I do, right? Being the guide, guiding them to where they ultimately want to go, and giving them the resources that they need. But ultimately, as you said, it's their decision, and it's their journey. You also mentioned something there that kind of caught me here a little bit, and it's the side of money. I think that you and people who work in wealth management get to see that a lot of people don't. Yes, money can be an exciting topic, an exciting conversation, obviously, especially when you got a lot of it,
Right.
which I'm sure a lot of
Absolutely.
people you work with do. But to your point, there is a side of it where it's not so exciting, and there's a lot of stress tied around it. And, there are sacrifices that have to be made, as you mentioned, whether it's time with your kids or your family. And I think a lot of that ties into just the workload that comes around that. Sometimes to get that money, you're working a lot of hours, long weeks, long days, right? When someone's under that kind of load, where do you kind of see the decision making start to slip, when it comes to, day-to-day decision making and then kind of their work?
Good question. I mean, a lot of the individuals that I'm meeting with are the highest performers, a lot of the, successful business owners and everything. I would say, like you mentioned, it's just a lot of workload, and stress and not hitting that reset button or not having the systems in place to fall back on and reevaluate, why you're doing this. But early in my career, full transparency, a lot of the individuals that I'm meeting with, unfortunately, I haven't met them in a point of their life where we can be proactive. It's a lot of reactive work. You know, a lot of things have happened or maybe, discipline or habits that have compounded over time in a negative way and put them in a hole to where, they're looking for more structure or a game plan of how to get out of that situation. But yeah, I mean, I think having the conversation is a great start. Absolutely.
100%, man. Love that response to it. And, the reactive and, I mean, I think in the business world, we can definitely attest to sometimes, you're in the situations. And there's this one guy actually that I listen to a lot. I don't know if you heard of him, but he's by the name of, I mean, most business owners have this story, but Myron Golden is the guy that I was watching. I
Mhm.
mean, at one point, I think he owed like the IRS like $4 million, something crazy like that, like lost all his business, had to like do a short sale on his house, a lot of crazy stuff. Return his car in. He called it MePoed instead of repoed because he brought the car back in and said, "Hey, I can't afford this anymore." But it's just crazy stories like that. To your point, and it's reactive and having to learn a lot of hard lessons on how to get back and get to that point where you're making better decisions with your money, right?
Mhm.
Feel like because of the nature of what you do, back to the point of this whole podcast, right? The catch window, where preparation meets opportunity. You're meeting a lot of people who some are prepared, of course, but like you said, some weren't and they missed the window, they missed an opportunity, and now they're trying to align themselves again and to get to a place where they can seize the next window of opportunity. What would you say kind of separates someone who stays, steady in these seasons of pressure and they're dealing with hard things, from someone who starts to make reactive decisions or continues to make reactive decisions?
Yeah, I think it comes a lot with, structure, discipline, and self-respect. And I think anything can be achievable. Most people, if they take the time and really take a step back and think about what they really want, where things aren't where they like them to be, where they'd like to see themselves in the future, once you get that clear vision and really break down, what's going on in your life, then, that's diagnosing where you're at and is where you start, and then from there, I think it's really just about, like I said, creating structure and a game plan, and then having the self-respect and discipline to actually follow it. I mean, personally, I'm battling that all the time. I mean, it's very easy, you have this strict regiment or things that non-negotiables, your to-do list, your goals, and what you need to do in order to make them happen. But it's not always the easiest to, knock those out and, be a machine, if you will. So I think it starts with structure, and then it also, you have to really know yourself and identify those reset buttons, identify the breaks you need to take. I think it really just comes down to having that why, and be able to take different, perspectives or distance yourself from the situation, look at it from a little bit different angles. Because I think one thing is, with high pressure situations and the more, things start to snowball, everything in your head is speeding up instantly. So, I think just being mindful, the self-awareness and just slowing things down, helps a ton. Give yourself a chance to get yourself back on the tracks or stay on the tracks.
I love that, man. I think, yeah, I mean, talk about life, right? I mean, a lot of us are just moving way too fast and doing too much. And we think the more we do and the faster we move, the better things are going to get. But oftentimes, to your point, it's slowing down and taking things off the plate that allows us to really, start to flourish and do good again. And I love what you mentioned about plans. I mean, my background, also former collegiate athlete, but also someone who deals and helps people understand the importance of planning and structuring, when it comes to mental, physical health. It's so important to have a plan. And I believe the reason why most people fail, it's not because they necessarily had a bad plan, but they fail because they, for whatever reason, weren't able to stick to it. In your experience, is that more, would you say, is that more about the plan itself or more about the person who's trying to execute it?
I think it's both. I think when you're planning for a client or anything in general, you have to be mindful of the individual. I mean, I use a ton of trainer analogies. I mean, it's one of the go-tos when we're talking about what's a comfortable amount that you'd like to, we have everything taken care of, you know, what's a comfortable amount that you could see yourself putting away on a monthly basis? And they ask, aren't you supposed to tell me? And we say, well, yeah, but it's a lot like having a trainer. If you hire a trainer that you go to the gym and you see them, they work you out for, an hour and a half. You can't walk the next day, you're exhausted. You're like, it was probably a pretty good workout, but I mean, do you want to go back to that guy the next day? Like, is that going to be sustainable? Are you going to be able to stick to that plan? But on the opposite, you go to a trainer and you pay him and you're there for half an hour, and you didn't break a sweat. And now you're thinking the complete opposite. You're like, did I get anything out of this? What am I doing this for? So it's always finding that happy medium and being flexible and adjusting your goals. Just, I think, yeah, I would say finding that being comfortable, being uncomfortable, but being mindful of having attainable processes. I mean, the simpler the better.
100%. I love that analogy. I totally get that. And I think, I always go back to, and this is my biggest philosophy, in my world. And when it comes to, that catch window and being prepared for when these moments come, I think it's all about, we get so caught up in this hustle and grind culture of the world we live in. That's just how society is, right? Hustle, hustle, grind, grind. And the more I study this thing, the more I do this, the more I work in this field, in this world of entrepreneurship and then health and fitness optimization. It's really more so about ebbing and flowing and finding your rhythm. And just like what you're saying, there's a rhythm and balance to how things work. And it's getting within your rhythm and within your balance where you really are able to be consistent with whatever you're doing and actually get the results from that, whatever that thing is. And I think a lot of that, tying that into, yes, that it takes preparation, it takes having the right plan, but it also takes, a little bit of risk, and for some people I know in your world, a lot of times people may assume that risk is just numbers. But in reality, how much would you say is that risk really tied to behavior and decision making?
Well, I think a lot of the people that I'm talking to, like I said, the high performers, typically they're more risk averse, or usually have a little bit more understanding, or you know understand the risk reward aspect per se. But I guess what you're talking to specifically sounds reminds me a lot of the scenarios I see where people don't have a ton of discretionary income at the end of the month, and a risk to them, whether it's right or wrong, is them even allocating that amount, that they're not used to in the first place. I'm in an interesting scenario where I just try to make them understand. I think people lose sight that, if you're depending on the planning aspects, I mean, a lot of the times what I'm doing is the money that you're giving me is still your money. So as far as I think people think of it as almost like an expense, or, you're making that investment and then, you can't use it or anything. I feel like I'm in a unique situation where I can kinda remind people, I'm like, "This isn't money that you're spending that's going out the door." I mean, it's you still have it, but risk in general, I think a big thing is just a lot of people don't know where they stand on risk, or they don't wanna be risky because they don't have enough, financial acuity or investment knowledge to invest in something, and it's risky for them because they don't know about it. So a lot of times, as people become more comfortable, I mean, see the process, see it work, I'm able to educate them and spend more time with them. You'd be surprised, how much more comfortable they are taking on more risk. Did that answer your question? I feel like I may have went a different direction with it.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. Well, I think you answered it in a way that, if there was like a behind the curtain reason why I was asking, I think you kind of covered it right. I think to your point, a lot about how people see risk is, once you sit down, you're able to talk with them. I think it really does. A lot of it's in their head, right? How they see what risk looks like and how that impacts their decisions. And I think it even ties back to your point about helping people get untie their emotions from the money. I think a lot of that is giving them the truth about how this stuff really works, and being able to ease their mind and their decision making by helping them realize, okay, this is still your money, right? This isn't like you just blew your money on a Ferrari or something, right? And it's out the
Right.
door, and like this is your money and it's being managed well, and ultimately it's an investment. So I think no, I think that 100% answered me. I think that's a great perspective to have. I mean, I think everything when it comes to whether it's your wealth, your health, relationships, is all about having the right perspective about these things.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of it comes back to clarity, focus, things that you were kind of mentioning, right? And emotional control. Based on what you're saying, I feel like I know the answer, but I just want to hear you kind of expound on it because I love your perspective on it. How much do you feel like clarity, focus, emotional control impact the outcomes, impact their ability to get the most out of, their investment and what they're looking to accomplish?
I think absolutely. I think it's everything. I think, yeah, I mean, when we first meet with people, we do an in-depth analysis on everything, but the first time we meet, we spend the most time out of everything talking about what's important to them and what are their goals. We'll split it up into 1 year, 3 to 5 years, and then what's the long-term vision? What's that retirement want to look like? And from there, we can put all the recommendations in place, and make it as easy as possible. But yeah, I mean, especially the business owners and the sales guys, the high pressure jobs. I think it's absolutely everything. I think it's all discipline, structure, keeping things, as simple as you can, turning complex into, taking the simplest perspective of it. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's probably the most important possible thing, at least skills, as far as approach to success standpoint.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I see it all the time. I mean, a lot of what I do is, getting behind the scenes of just, yes, there's things about the physical body, and whether it's weight loss, whether it's muscle building. But I mean, so much of just the health, and this is a side of health, I believe, health and fitness, that a lot of entrepreneurial business mind people are starting to see. But I mean, it impacts so much of your mental, physical, and your ability to be durable
Mhm.
within your work environment to allow you to get the most out of whatever you're wanting to accomplish. In your perspective, do you kind of see that, right? If someone is, let's say someone's slightly off mentally, physically, or they're just fatigued, do you feel like you see that show up in their financial decisions kind of over time?
Yeah, because I think, when everything's clicking, you're ambitious, you feel like things are moving in the right direction, when you're in like that the most disciplined version of yourself, you're kind of just flowing. But I mean, personally even, and also things I've observed with, high performing individuals is the energy aspects and just, mental clarity. I think it controls so much as far as your ability to stay on track because, it gets a lot harder to stay disciplined and make those correct decisions on a daily basis when you're out of energy. Those goals that you're striving to achieve they don't sound worth it all the time, in those situations because, you're hungry, you're not taking care of your body, your mental clarity, you're not taking care of yourself, and then things start slipping. You start taking shortcuts, those non-negotiables from last week are no longer non-negotiables. You haven't you let them slip, but, you start getting behind, and then, like I said, everything speeds up, and you don't know what to do. It's like yeah, it can be tough. I think it's directly tied to a lot of different, whether that's financial decisions, how you're treating other people or interacting with those that you care about. If there's not a healthy balance and process in place that, is set to take care of yourself, things will slip pretty quickly.
100%. Couldn't agree more with that, man. And I think it's the perfect kind of a never ending loop of decision making to performance, performance to decision making. I think so much to your point about how you take care of your physical, your mental, it impacts the way you make decisions, in your workplace, within your investments, with how you handle your money. And I think obviously the initial decision before it even comes to, that side is okay, making the decision to prioritize your own personal, mental, physical health to make sure you're making the best decisions and you have the most clarity and focus, at the moments where you need it the most. And I feel like no one obviously sees that more than someone is in your position dealing with these high performing people and these entrepreneurs. Have you ever kind of seen a situation where like, nothing was technically wrong with the plan, but results still weren't where they should be?
At this point in my career, I think I've been really fortunate. I feel like the full plans that I've been able to put together start to finish and really take care of people and then them go and implement it. No, to be honest, I mean, it takes care of itself for the most part. But I hear about stories all the time, individuals that were doing everything right and it just, wasn't working out.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, well, to that point too, especially, when the environment is and the strategy is already pretty sound, do you think, or have you ever seen where the biggest variables, kind of become the person executing the plan? Have you ever kind of, I guess, seen a plan not, be executed the way that it should because of the person who was executing it?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I would say, we always tell people we don't want to be we don't want to tell them how to spend their money. The most ideal plan is for everything to have an assignment and then there be enough leftover money at the end of the month for them to do whatever they want. But, in order for that to happen, you do have to be disciplined on the front end to put yourself in a position to be able to do that. I mean, sometimes the margins just aren't there. There's not enough money to be spread. So, yeah, we'll put together a plan and they don't always, if the large purchases, obviously, trying to that lifestyle creep or trying to live up to, whatever the cool car their friend bought or, the inheritance their buddy got and now they got a farm. I mean, you name it. I think things happen, that make you lose focus. Yeah, I mean, I think it comes like the plans that I see fail typically are credit card debt that's just gotten too out of control. Sometimes it's not how can we, make sometimes people have money that isn't there. So we've tried, or that's there, but they can't utilize because it's going somewhere else. So, helping them save money in different areas. But for example, say somebody racked up $10,000 in credit card debt and we put together a plan for them to knock those out. But, if the budget isn't there and they're dipping more into it, those are kind of the situations that I see. It's, the discipline of actually sticking to the plan itself. From a number standpoint, it can be there, but emotionally, people have habits. They're sweet tooth, eating out, sneakers, shopping, traveling, you name it. So I think people tell themselves a lot, that they're maybe using this money's to be enjoyed. It is, but you know, I think you also have to earn that right to put yourself in a position. And sometimes you can't live the life that you want to live for certain aspects of times. You have to have those seasons, to be disciplined and put yourself in that position. I mean, thankfully, a lot of the individuals that I'm meeting, as I'm becoming more experienced, are high performers. That they do have everything clicking, and I'm sure you can attest to it as well. Just from a trainer standpoint, it's okay. Now you have all those good habits. Now let's delegate. Now let's find ways to optimize and save time. But thankfully, a lot of those high performers have good heads on their shoulders. Everybody goes through different things, but from that standpoint, I don't. I don't see too much of a problem with the more successful individuals that I get to meet with.
Yeah, 100%. No, I think you make a good point too, and it's something that, will always be, I think, an important point for regardless of whatever someone's wanting to accomplish, is that point of preparation, right? Where you need patience and whatever you're doing, right, to ultimately see the fruit of whatever you're working towards. And to your point, I think even financially, it's easy to kind of lose sight of that, right? You want to enjoy your money, you work hard, you want to be able to take that. But there are things, whether it's credit card debt, or on the, I think of health and fitness or mental health, right? Whether it's okay, right now, this extra weight I'm carrying around, or maybe my diet isn't the best right now, whatever it is, these things are holding me back. And ultimately, the changes that are uncomfortable at the moment are leading me towards where I ultimately want to be. I mean, I think it aligns perfectly with kind of the whole point, right, of this podcast, right? Okay,
Mhm.
catch window where that business and physical preparation kind of align, right? Putting myself in a position through my work, through my patience, to where there is an opportunity and I'm able to seize it because of the preparation that I put in. For your clients, I know you work with a lot of people who obviously have established themselves at this point, but how small would you say the window actually is to capitalize on these opportunities when they show up?
I'm thinking of just being ready for the opportunity, in general, and it's just a lot of those conversations are so spontaneous and, just come of the moment to where sure, I think, you're obviously always gonna have opportunities that'll come around here and there. So it's not like you're just gonna miss the catch window, like you only had one in your entire life. I mean, it may be true, the best opportunity, but I think just taking care of yourself, puts you in just such a better position to take advantage of those opportunities, whether it's a conversation in the sauna at a gym with a really successful business owner that you were just in the right mind, in the right mood, and taking care of yourself, and you got a lot out of the conversation. And now you have somebody, a contact to lean on, or a new friend, networking opportunity. And if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not in the right headspace, things are all over the place. I think you just unfortunately may look back on a lot of opportunities that were missed because you weren't able to seize it, because you weren't taking care of yourself. So I don't know about like a time frame per se, but I mean, I look back at my baseball career, how I handled the different schools I was at and the different dynamics, whether that be I was compensated on the scholarship standpoint or the specific role on the team. I look back at a lot of like even instances like that where I could have handled things differently. And I think a lot of it had to do with me not taking care of myself, overall as a whole and being in the headspace to take advantage of some of those opportunities.
100%. No, and I agree with you, man. I think, obviously in life, as long as you're still breathing, it's never too late. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Colonel Sanders story about the guy who did the whole KFC thing. I think he was like, it was like late 60s or something whenever he started that.
Really?
And obviously, yeah, no, it's crazy. And I think he was in the military for a while or something like that. And I don't know, he just wanted to make chicken really well, really, really, really excited to make fried chicken. So, no, he was pretty old when he started that. So to your point, I definitely think, as long as you're still breathing, there's always a window of opportunity to be seized. But to your point, regret is one of the worst feelings in the world, right? Knowing that you had opportunities for whatever reason, mentally, physically, you weren't ready to seize those opportunities. With the high performers you work with, when it comes to like the most disciplined, successful clients you work with, what would you say they do differently on a daily basis that kind of puts them in the position they're in to, seize those windows of opportunity?
I think that the highest performers I know, for the most part, live very intentional lifestyles. Everything is, they protect their energy, they protect their time, they're very calculated and have attention to detail. One thing that comes to mind, time blocks. Having allocated time, focus on a specific task that's locked in. That's what you're gonna do. And, it's not gonna be perfect, but all the time. But, having that structure in place and having, making those big goals and turning them into more, repetitive everyday actions of actually how to attain some of these things. I think that's one big thing. Sleep schedule probably is another one. People that people are that are deliberate about, optimizing their body and having as much mental clarity as possible. Just because, your patience is gonna you gotta have patience, you gotta have wanna continue to be outgoing, ambition, and drive, and I think, when your sleep schedule gets out of whack, that'll start slipping as well. So, really just time management, keeping things simple, drive, and then, yeah, I think making making things as simple as possible and attacking, individual tasks at mind at one at a time, and then letting that compound those positive decisions, those actions, that make you feeling good and, continue to compound. I think those are a lot of the things that I see. They also have long-term visions. They don't think small. I think, you know, the world that we are in, depending on your environment and everything, there's kind of a stereotypical like expectation of, kind of the buckets or phases that you'll fall into. I think some of the higher performers completely ignore those and they think bigger of themselves and hold themselves to a higher standard.
Especially, I mean, I've heard that a lot, especially about that last point. I think, they talk about thinking in like 20-year plans, versus thinking in 5 years and always kind of playing the long game. And ironically enough, because they always play the long game and think long term, they get what they want a lot faster than people who are constantly thinking short term and then jumping to the next thing and jump to the next thing and never staying with something consistently. To those people who may feel called out by that, who are people who do that, if they want to build real financial stability and growth, would you say they should focus more on like better strategies or becoming more of a disciplined decision maker?
Well, it can come from a lot of different areas. I mean, there's there's an order of operations in financial planning that's pretty much well-rounded, like broadly considered, sound financial planning advice. And first and foremost, you need to have that emergency fund, and most people don't. We can't do anything without some sort of safety net, and the amount of clarity that comes with just building that in itself is a huge weight off so many people's shoulders. I mean, if you're married, have a couple kids, you got a mortgage, maybe a sales job that's up and down, and things are going to hit the fan all the time. And you're just going to be stressed out over and over and over again. And it's going to be so hard to get ahead if we're not deliberate about, at least checking that first box off. So yeah, I think it's definitely more about the decision making. The plan can be bulletproof, but without the sound decision making behind it, it's not going to work. But we meet them where they're at, keep working on it. That's where we're at, I guess.
100%, man. Oh, I love that. Power of decision, I mean, super powerful. And it's something I always talk a lot about when I'm working with people or just, when I'm kind of talking through a point. I always tell people there is a difference between a decision and a choice. A choice is picking from multiple options. A decision is saying there is no other option but this. So I think you speak to such a power when it comes to decision making that's super important, especially for something like this. I mean, we're talking about financial freedom, stability, and growth. There's going to be a lot of hard decisions that you have to make where you have to go, man, there is no other option. This is what I'm doing, regardless of what things look like, regardless of what I've dealt with in the past and struggled through. This is what I'm going to decide to do and keep pressing forward with. And I think that's just to your point, right? Regardless of the plan, if you have not made a decision, if you have not committed to I'm going to do this, I mean, it's all for nothing, right? So
Yeah.
no, I love that. I think that's such an important point.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, think a lot of people start making those changes, or like the breaking point per se is when they're either fed up, like they either experienced some form of loss or tragedy with, a family member or someone else around them, or they're just fed up with, their quality of life and lack of flexibility. So, yeah, I think short term hard, long term easy. I mean, my job isn't to, have somebody live under a rock and, save all their money. My job is to get you to a point to where you can, go on 3 to 4 vacations a year. I'm not like I'm not the dictator per se. I'm just there to,
Sure.
I'm just there to give them a route, to achieve some of those goals. A lot like you, with building your body and taking care of your health.
100%. I love that, man. I love that. Hey, perspective. I think you give people a good perspective, right? Where back to your point about balance, where it's like you don't have to live under a rock and save all your every single thing, penny, every single dollar you get. But it's also having the wisdom to manage what you got really well, so you can enjoy those vacations. No, I agree. It's very very similar, and I think that's part of why, to the point of this podcast, why I think it's so powerful. The connect and the intersectionality I see between the two worlds of how business, how finances work, and how you want your body to work, and how you see your health and fitness very much a long-term game of optimizing and making decisions that set you up for success with both. But yeah, Jacob, for you personally, I mean, you've obviously helped a lot of people. You've done great work for business owners. Speaking of you, do you have any, like, I guess from where you're at right now, to a level you're wanting to get to? What is that for you? What is that big goal for you? I know it's April of 2026, so it's probably can't really say what is your 2026 goal, but we'll say what is that for you? What is that next level you're wanting to get to?
Next level I want to get to, I know we were texting back and forth. Even last night I was in the office till it's like I think I texted you like 9 or 10 p.m.
Yeah, and work ethic like crazy.
Yeah, I think from a from a number standpoint, I have my goals written on my desk. I want to bring in $5 million of new assets this year. I want to write $50,000 of insurance coverage for individuals, that need it. Then on the personal side, I'm very blessed to, 2 years ago I was still in school. I moved back in with my family, building my own book, and big goal that's been my, not my why, I guess, but my main thing I'm striving for immediately is to move out of the house and be able to put myself in a position to purchase a duplex, without a cosigner. So I've got to prove 2 years of income. So that's coming up in July, when I'll be able to take my 2-year average income, with Synergy and Mass Mutual. So really just keeping my head down, and like we've talked about this whole call, what do I need to do in order for those goals to be achieved? It's a lot of, the goals are number based, end goals, but in order to achieve those, it's a ridiculous amount of very small, disciplined, everyday steps. And, I'm not perfect. I think I've got too many goals, too many non-negotiables to where I could probably simplify some things. But that's where I'm at personally is, really just getting in front of as many people as possible. Want to do great work for them, build that network, those friendships, and get my first rental property. That's the first box on the list for me.
Heck yeah, man. Amazing goals. Well, based off that work schedule and that work ethic, man, I mean, that's happening pretty soon. I mean, I think that's obviously like my favorite saying I always live by is, do what others aren't willing to do so you can have what others can't have. And I think
Absolutely.
that's the way to do it with what you're doing. And that's what it's all about. I mean, like ultimately, yeah, of course, there are vanity to goals. And I don't think vanity is bad. I think vanity is a good part of what keeps you motivated. But there's also some concrete things to your goal. And ultimately they work on you just as much as you work on them. So I think that's super, super powerful to have something like that you're working towards that will set you and ultimately whatever your future family looks like, they'll set them up for life. So I think that's super cool, man. But just based off you and what you've learned in your own journey, man, and to accomplish, if someone could improve their clarity, energy, and consistency and remove decision fatigue, how much of an advantage do you think that gives them, financially over time?
Huge advantage. I mean, it's something that's been top of mind for me recently. With all these long hours, I mean, we've been talking about it. My physical health from like a fitness and activity and diet standpoint has started to slack. So I mean, it's part of the reason, we're gonna get together here pretty soon and address that. But I think it makes a huge difference because you can have like we were talking about, you can have the drive and the ambition and the want to, but you know, if you don't have that clarity and you're fighting brain fog and fatigue and I don't know, you're the trainer expert. I know there's a lot of like endorphins and chemicals
Yeah.
that go on and balances. That's part of the reason. Yeah, I mean, I'm reaching out to you. I mean, it's something I need to address. I think it's a huge advantage because without it, um, I mean, without it, you just have less. time, energy, and desire to accomplish what you want to.
100%, man. The best way I like to call it is this analogy that I made up. So no one out there steal this, but like, people say, "Oh, I have too much on my plate, too much on my plate." The best thing improving your mental, physical health and fitness can do for you is it allows you to grow more of what you are. So rather than taking things off your plate, you just have a bigger plate. You're
Yeah.
able to handle more, you're able to do more. And because you're able to handle more and do more, you're able to have and do things that other people can't have and can't do. And ultimately, that is the keys to success is to be able to elevate yourself to such a place where no one else can reach that elevation, right? Where they can't handle the air up there. They can't handle the amount of physical exertion it takes because of what you've done for your body and for your mind. So it is the best thing to your point. I mean, that's obviously, that's my world and that's what I do. And that's why I get so excited about it is because I know what it does. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's a multiplier. It's a business multiplier for anybody. And of course it can benefit teachers, nurses, y'all are there. It obviously benefits everybody, but when I think about the business world, it just gets me so excited. I mean, I'm a full believer as an entrepreneur, like business is what makes, we don't have an economy without business owners, without finances, without, wealth management. There's no economy, right? So it literally makes our world go. People who go out there and work hard and build business and sell. And so it's just huge, what it does for your mind and for your body. And like I said, just elevates you to a whole different level. So couldn't agree more, obviously on that one there. I think we think a lot alike with that. But Jacob, maybe you've obviously given a lot of value, a lot of information to what you do, and I think it'll be helpful for anybody. People who are looking to get their finances together, people who are looking to do what you're doing and ultimately be where you are right now. For those people, though, where can they connect with you and learn more about what you're doing and what you're building?
LinkedIn, honestly, that was a huge goal of mine, or goal's not the right word. Very big focus of mine in 2026 was just developing a brand to where I'm able to connect with individuals that maybe I haven't had the chance otherwise to connect with. You can follow me, connect with me, send a DM. I've got a link on there. You can book a call, or if you have any questions, but pretty easy to find. Yeah, that's my pitch, I guess.
Heck yeah.
It
But there
always
you go.
It always makes me laugh, 'cause, part of a podcast is, like, promoting yourself in some capacity as well, and I'm always listening to Joe Rogan's podcast. Joe Rogan's always trying to get them to, promote their shows, or, "Where can we find you? Where are you gonna be? What's your book called?" And they always get so uncomfortable. It's like the part they were least looking forward to.
I know the irony, right? That's like literally like advertisement. They're like, "Oh, I don't want no one to know about all that." Yeah,
Yeah.
that is so funny. Awesome, man. Hey, we appreciate your time, man. We appreciate, obviously, the conversation was great, chopping it up, and as always, I know this will help someone. It'll bless someone. So no, I just appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very thankful for having you, or having me, and I'm looking forward to working with you on my own personal fitness and health here pretty shortly, or very
Yeah.
shortly, later this week.
Awesome. Let's go.